So there's not really much else for me to make a video on today, so I thought I'd just get this out. It was announced a few minutes ago that the NFL is switching to postseason overtimes. They're removing the sudden death. They're allowing both teams to get at least one offensive possession, in contrast to the previous rule where the opening team takes the ball that wins the coin toss, or at least if they choose to take the ball. I don't know why they wouldn't, because I know in Madden there's an option to not take the ball if you win the coin toss, even in overtime, which you'd have to misclick, literally. You'd have to have a mental lapse to not accept the opening possession, but I digress. The opening team gets the ball, and if they score a touchdown, then game over, and the other offense doesn't get a chance. This is most exploited, at least the problems, or the imperfections, I should say, of the original rule were exploited in the Buffalo Bills-Chiefs game in the AFC divisional round, when both defenses were gassed. After going back and forth in the final 2 minutes, KC has an easy touchdown drive to go and win the game without Buffalo ever getting a chance in overtime. So, what initially struck me by this change was that it only occurred to postseason, but then again, in the regular season, given that the rules are going to stay the same, a heartbreaking overtime loss, that's not the end of the world, because let's say it happens in, a kickoff game in prime time in week 1, right? You still have 17 other weeks to, re-garner some momentum and reformulate your season and still make statements across the board. But in the playoffs, it's do or die. It's not the same deal whatsoever. So I think that it was a pretty fair move for the NFL to do this. Then again, though, there is another important counterpoint that I must raise here, because in, loosening the overtime rules here, that's sort of discounting the importance of playing good defense, because in the postseason, usually the teams that make it there, at least most of them, are going to have competent offenses and or defenses. And if you can't decide a game in 4 quarters of play, that usually means that your offense and or defense has been competitive to that point. And if you can't continue competing, then the argument can very well be raised that you don't deserve to continue playing, and ultimately, if you can't stop a team, then go home and cry about it. So there's that as well, and honestly, if the Washington Commanders ever make it to the postseason anytime soon, they could very well be bailed out by this rule, because, as we all know, this defense does not know what endurance means, at least in the context of, covering receivers, because we can lock down guys early, but then, of course, our pass coverage gets exploited. Our pass rush, of course, as I mentioned in my last video with the departure of Tim Settle and Matt Ioannidis, is going to be a lot thinner. God forbid we don't emphasize that in the draft. But yeah, we'll see what happens there. But just my initial thoughts on this rule change. Let me know if you guys have any thoughts on this rule change. I know it was kind of a thing that a lot of us saw coming, but yeah, feel free to drop them down below and subscribe for more. I'm Redskins Fans Unite. I'll be talking to you guys next time, but for now, stay tuned and hail.